Alright, our next episode is The Arsenal of Freedom, episode number 21, and it originally aired on April 9th, 1988. It was written by Richard Manning and Hans Beimler, and the story was by Maurice Hurley and Robert Lewin, and directed by Les Landau. Alright, and plot-wise with this particular episode, the Enterprise is investigating the disappearance of the USS Drake, which was orbiting a planet called Minos. Now, originally, Starfleet sent the Drake to Minos to confirm reports by a long-range probe that all intelligent life had ceased to exist there. And as soon as the Enterprise drops into orbit, all of a sudden an automated sales pitch begins from the planet's surface. And the holographic salesman relates in glowing terms, actually, that Minos is the Arsenal of Freedom, hence the title of the episode, and it's a planet dedicated to selling sophisticated weapon systems to anyone who can pay the price. So Picard immediately sees that this could be a dangerous place, even if there aren't any people there. So an away team consisting of Riker, Data, and Yar beam down to the planet, and shortly afterward, Riker thinks he encounters a man named Paul Rice, who was an old colleague of his. But soon Riker is able to tell that this is not Rice, because Riker tells Rice that he's now commanding the ship Lollipop, and Rice doesn't react to this at all, and Rice simply asks, "Oh, I'm not familiar with that ship. Tell me a little bit more about it. What are the schematics?" And then at the same time, Riker points out that Rice has not called him by his first name, Will, which Paul Rice usually does since they were old friends. So immediately this image of Paul Rice turns to its true form, and it is a weapon that turns into an attack pod, and it encases Riker in a coma force field, and that basically leaves LaForge in command because Picard and Dr. Crusher have decided to beam down to assist them after they realize this. While Data is working to free Riker, a second pod appears and begins firing on the away team. And on a separate part of the planet, Picard and Crusher are heading into the woods, and they fall into an underground cavern. And together, Data and Yar destroy the second pod. At the same time, another pod attacks the Enterprise. LaForge is opting for strategic retreat, and he separates the saucer section, actually. So this is another episode where we see separation of the saucer. And he returns to Minos with only the star drive section. At the same time, Data and Yar free Riker, finally, by adapting their phasers to the right frequency and break off the force field. And they set off to find Picard and Crusher. Now, in the underground cavern, Picard is treating Dr. Crusher, who, when they fell into this cavern, she was badly injured. And he also looks through the rubble and finds a display terminal. Now, the automated salesman appears again, and he stresses the elegance of the demonstration that he's shown the Enterprise crew. So Picard realizes that all the attacks have been part of the sales pitch. So he agrees to buy one of the systems just so the demonstration will stop. And immediately it does, and in good time too, because a fourth pod was about to show up, and Yar and Data were uncertain how they would be able to defeat this particular one. At the same time, above the planet, LaForge is battling the pod, and he eventually destroys it with a little bit of wisdom on his part. Now the crew beams the away team back, as they were unable to before because of the attack, and Dr. Crusher is patched up and back into perfect health, and they warp away with the saucer section. Picard even lets Geordi LaForge pilot that back, so he has a little more experience and can merge the two parts of the ship together. So LaForge is very excited about that. And that's the end of the episode. Now, originally, the episode was a little bit different. The story had Picard as the one who was severely injured, in fact, that he was dying, and Crusher, while she was treating him, revealed her feelings for Picard while trying to save him. But Gene Roddenberry was not interested in doing a love story, and so that was actually changed. And Les Landau made the suggestion to switch around the roles of Picard and Crusher in order to take out that particular element. Now, the story was really supposed to be a commentary on the sale of American Grumman F-14 Tomcats to Iran. That was something in the 80s where we were supplying that. And I don't know if you remember much about that time period, but there was quite a battle between Iran and Iraq during that time period. So it was a little bit of the ultimate conclusion of what that would be written for a Star Trek episode. Now, the model of the pod that I mentioned, and in the story it's called an Echo Papa 607 drone. That was created by Dan Curry from a pantyhose container and a shampoo bottle. So it's kind of funny how some of these props and special effects, especially in the early season, they were used very cheaply, but they look a little more sophisticated. So that was a clever way of doing that. And he just handed this model and was actually moving this around. Of course, they cut him out, but tried to make the movements look very fluid. But he wore a pair of green tights, and he was manually moving the model across the screen as Riker and Yar and Data were trying to fire against these pods. So a little bit of ingenuity in creating that particular prop there. Now, as far as reviews go, several people rewatched this episode, including Keith Candido, and he liked the appearance of Vincent Schiavelli, and Vincent Schiavelli plays the salesman who has that that automated message, and he basically said that he totally owns every scene that he's in, and he does do a great job. I like seeing Vincent Schiavelli both in TV series and in movies. It's too bad that we lost him. He was a pretty interesting actor. However, Keith Candido thought that the situation which left LaForge in charge of the Enterprise was very contrived, and he said that Picard doesn't even give a good excuse for going down to the planet, beyond the script calling for it. And he's actually right about that. As I was watching the episode, I kind of wondered, why is Picard wanting to go down? It just kind of seems like he feels like it. And you do have in this episode Troy having a strong objection to this, and Picard just says, "Noted," and he goes to the transporter. Definitely if Riker was on the bridge at that point, he would object, but maybe Picard is taking advantage of that fact that Riker isn't there to stop him, and he goes for it. So really a mixed review on this particular episode. I thought it was strange that in this episode, when Picard decides to buy, quote unquote, this weapon, and the pods on the planet disappear, that they don't disappear for the one that's attacking the Enterprise. And Geordi still has to figure out a way to destroy that. And he does, thankfully, because the script calls for it. But you would think that the one on attacking the Enterprise would vanish too. I was expecting that, and I was surprised when it didn't. And yeah, I don't think there's any reason for... I was scratching my head why LaForge was put in command, because at this point in the show, he's a lieutenant junior grade, and they make a big point in the episode that the chief engineer outranks him, and Lieutenant Worf, I believe, is a full lieutenant in this episode, and he outranks him, so it's nice to see LaForge have a little bit more authority in the first season, but kind of a strange one. So that is the episode Arsenal of Freedom. Not a bad watch, but also kind of forgettable in my opinion. Stay tuned for the next one, and I'll talk to you guys later.